Your Honor, I present Exhibit A, my itemized invoice for raising my niece after her mother's death, Aunt Catherine announced, sliding a manila folder across the courtroom with the confidence of someone who'd never lost an argument at Thanksgiving dinner. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning the $30,000 bill that listed everything from emotional labor to birthday cake expenses, then looked up with an expression I'd never seen in 3 years of law school. Mrs. Harrison, he said slowly, before we proceed, perhaps you could explain why this invoice doesn't mention the steady financial support you were already receiving for Amelia's care. The courtroom erupted. Catherine's lawyer scrambled through papers while my aunt's face drained of color. Behind me, cousins who'd come to cheer on their mother's righteous cause started whispering. I sat perfectly still, letting the bomb I'd buried in discovery documents do its work. That's different, Catherine stammered, her voice losing the righteous indignation she wore like armor. That money was for her care, which you're now billing her for. Judge Coleman's eyebrow arched. So you had dedicated funds for her support, and now you want her to pay you again for the same expenses. I touched my lawyer Elena Reeves's arm. Our predetermined signal. She rose, smooth as aged whiskey. Your Honor, we'd like to present our counter-evidence regarding how those funds were actually used. Catherine flushed crimson. This is ridiculous. I raised that ungrateful girl for 8 years. 8 years of sacrifice. Sacrifice. The word tasted like copper pennies. The same word she used when she locked me in my room for asking about Mom. The same word she spat when I begged to see family photos. The same word that decorated every guilt trip, every manipulation, every reminder that I was a burden she claimed to carry. Judge Coleman lifted a hand for silence. We'll proceed in an orderly fashion. Mrs. Harrison, please explain your invoice. She straightened her discount designer jacket, the one she'd bought with money meant for my college. After my sister died, I took in Amelia out of the goodness of my heart. No one else would. Her father was already gone, and I had 3 children of my own. Every penny on that invoice represents a sacrifice my family made. Let's go through this line by line, the judge said, his tone sharpening. Food, $8,000. Mrs. Harrison, were you not already receiving regular funds intended for Amelia's needs? Well, yes, but... And household assistance for a family of 5. That barely covered. Catherine's lawyer touched her arm, but she shook him off. Your Honor, those programs don't cover the full cost of raising a child. No, Judge Coleman agreed, which is why you also received additional monthly support. According to these records, it was more than enough for the basics. I had expenses. Catherine's voice pitched higher. Do you know how much teenagers cost? Clothes, school supplies, activities. Activities? I spoke for the first time, my voice carrying across the courtroom. What activities, Aunt Catherine? Elena touched my hand in warning, but Judge Coleman nodded. The plaintiff may speak to this point. I stood 18 years of silence breaking like a dam. I wasn't allowed to join any activities. Too expensive, you said. I wore your daughter Megan's hand-me-downs, even though support funds were meant for clothing. I ate different meals than your family, rice and beans while you had steak. Should I continue? You ungrateful. Catherine began, but her lawyer grabbed her arm. Miss Martinez, the judge said, not unkindly, do you have evidence of these claims? Elena handed him a thick folder. Photos, Your Honor. School records showing Amelia was denied field trips because payments were never made. Witness statements from teachers who provided her lunch money. Medical notes citing malnutrition. And this, she lifted a small leather journal. Amelia's diary from ages 10 through 15, documenting where her support really went. I remembered that diary, hidden under a loose floorboard, written in code Catherine never cracked. Every dollar she spent on herself while telling me to be grateful for scraps. Every time Megan got new shoes while I walked with holes in mine. Every Christmas where my gift was being allowed to sit at the table. This is character assassination. Catherine shrieked. I gave her a home. I could have let her go into foster care. Foster care might have been kinder, I said quietly. At least they wouldn't have stolen my future while calling it charity. Judge Coleman read through several pages, his expression darkening with each one. Mrs. Harrison, these bank records show large cash withdrawals coinciding with the benefit deposits. Can you explain? Household expenses. To Las Vegas? He held up a credit card statement. Atlantic City, these casino charges. The courtroom had gone deadly quiet. Behind Catherine, her children, my cousins, were staring at their mother with dawning horror. Megan, who'd always wondered why she got so many nice things. James, who'd asked once why I didn't eat dinner with them. Little Sarah, who tried to share her toys until Catherine told her I didn't deserve them. Your Honor, Alana said, we'd also like to present evidence of educational fraud. Objection. Catherine's lawyer finally found his voice. Overruled. Proceed. Alana handed over another folder. Mrs. Harrison claimed on multiple legal documents that she was saving for Amelia's college education. These sworn affidavits for state programs, federal aid applications. Yet when Amelia turned 18, the college fund was empty. The $50,000 that should have been there, based on the benefits specifically designated for education, had vanished. I had unexpected expenses, Catherine muttered. Like your bathroom renovation? I asked. The one you posted all over Facebook? Or Megan's Sweet 16 party that cost $15,000? The one I wasn't allowed to attend because I wouldn't fit in with her friends? Miss Martinez, Judge Coleman said gently, I understand this is emotional, but I'm sorry, Your Honor. I took a breath. But she's not just asking for money. She's asking me to pay for my own neglect, to finance my own abuse, to thank her for stealing my childhood and my future. Catherine's face had gone purple. Abuse? I never laid a hand on you. No, I agreed. You just told me every day that I killed my mother by being born. That my father left because I was too much trouble. That I should be grateful you didn't dump me at the fire station. You just locked me in my room when your friends came over because I was an embarrassment. You just made me eat in the kitchen while your real family ate in the dining room. You just. Enough? Catherine slammed her hand on the table. I want my money. I deserve compensation for taking in my sister's mistake. The word hung in the air like a noose. Mistake. Judge Coleman's voice had gone arctic. You consider your niece a mistake. Catherine's lawyer was frantically whispering in her ear, but the damage was done. Her true face had slipped out in front of everyone. Amit. We all heard what you meant, the judge said. He turned to me. Miss Martinez, do you have anything else you'd like to add? I looked at Catherine, really looked at her for the first time in years. She seemed smaller somehow, stripped of the power she held over a grieving child. Just one thing. Aunt Catherine, do you remember what you told me the day I got the full scholarship to college? She said nothing. You told me I should give it up. That people like us don't go to university. That I should get a job and start paying you back for all you'd done. I smiled sably. That's when I knew I had to leave. Had to become someone you couldn't tear down anymore. And did you? Judge Coleman asked. Become someone? I graduated summa cum laude. Got a full ride to law school. Passed the bar on my first try. I straightened my shoulders. I became a victims' rights attorney. I help children who are being financially exploited by their guardians. Turns out, there are a lot of Aunt Catherines in the world. The judge nodded slowly. I've heard enough. Mrs. Harrison, your claim is not only dismissed, but I'm referring this case to the Department of Social Services for investigation of benefits fraud. You received $280,000 to care for your niece, and by your own admission today, you considered her a burden and a mistake. The evidence suggests you systematically deprived her of necessities while enriching yourself. You can't. Furthermore, he continued, I'm recommending criminal investigation for fraud, neglect, and fiduciary breach. You had a legal obligation to use those funds for Miss Martinez's benefit. Instead, you finance a lifestyle upgrade while subjecting her to emotional abuse and neglect. Catherine's lawyer was pulling her toward the door, but she turned back, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of remorse, tears of rage. You destroyed our family. No, I said quietly. You did that when you chose money over a child who needed love. The courtroom began to empty. My cousins filed past. Megan paused, mouth opening like she wanted to say something, then hurried after her mother. Only Sarah lingered, now 21 and looking lost. Amelia, she whispered. I didn't know. About the money, the treatment. I was so young, but I remember things now. The different dinners. The locked door. I'm sorry. You were a child too, I said gently. It wasn't your fault. Elena gathered our papers while I sat in the sudden quiet. We'd won, but victory tasted like ashes in old photographs. You okay? Elena asked. You know what the ironic part is? I laughed, but it sounded hollow. If she just loved me even a little, I would have given her anything. I make good money now. I would have helped her, supported her in her old age. All she had to do was be kind. Some people can't see past their greed, Elena said. Outside the courthouse, Catherine was screaming at her lawyer about appeals, about injustice, about ungrateful children who don't understand sacrifice. But I was done listening. I'd spent 8 years as her audience, watching her perform the role of martyred aunt while she picked my future from my pockets like a common thief. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Megan. Can we talk? There are things you should know about where that money went. Things Mom doesn't know we know. I showed Alina, who raised an eyebrow. Could be interesting. Or painful, I said. Most truth is both, she replied. That night, I met Megan and James at a coffee shop downtown. Sarah was there too, fidgeting with her phone. They looked like kids caught stealing cookies, except the jar they'd raided was full of secrets. We found papers, Megan said without preamble. After you left for college, Mom was panicking about something, tearing apart her closet. We found bank statements, gambling debts, loans she'd taken out using your social security number. Identity theft, I said numbly. Of course. We confronted her, James added. She said it was for the family, that you owed us anyway. But we knew it wasn't right. We just didn't know what to do. You were kids, I repeated what I told Sarah. It wasn't your responsibility. But we benefited. Sarah said quietly. My college tuition, their cars, family vacations you never got to go on. We benefited from your suffering. So what now? I asked. They exchanged glances. Megan pulled out a checkbook. We can't give back your childhood, but we can start somewhere. I don't want your money, I said. It's not ours, James said firmly. It never was. We talked to a lawyer after today. We're going to testify if the criminal case goes forward. And we're going to make sure you get back what was stolen. It won't be everything, but... Why? I interrupted. Why help me now? Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Because you're our cousin. Because what she did was wrong. Because family shouldn't be conditional on bank balances. And Megan added quietly, because we remember the little girl who used to share her single Christmas present with us. Even though we had dozens. You deserve better than our mother gave you. Maybe it's too late to be the family you needed then. But it's not too late to be decent human beings now. I cried then. For the first time since Catherine had taken me in, I cried in front of my cousins. Not tears of pain or rage, but something cleaner. Something that tasted like possibility. The criminal case would take months. The investigation would be thorough. Catherine would likely face jail time for benefits fraud and identity theft. But sitting in that coffee shop with 3 people who chose truth over comfortable lies, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 18 years. Family, not the kind that demands invoices for love, but the kind that shows up when the truth gets ugly. The kind that chooses justice over blood. The kind that says, we were wrong, and means it. Catherine had presented her bill, $30,000 for a childhood of neglect dressed up as charity. The judge had countered with his own invoice, $280,000 stolen, plus interest, plus a criminal record, plus the loss of her children's respect. But the real cost? That was written in a 10-year-old's diary, in missed school trips, in dinners eaten alone, in a college fund that evaporated like morning dew. You can't put a price on childhood. But Catherine had tried, and now she was learning what happens when the bill comes due. As we left the coffee shop, Sarah linked her arm through mine. So, cousin, tell us about this victims' rights work you do. How can we help? And for the first time in my life, that word, cousin, didn't sound like a reminder of what I wasn't. It sounded like a promise of what we could become. Starting today, we're moving in with my parents. It's not a big deal because they're my own parents, right? But my husband surprised me with this idea out of nowhere. I was so shocked and close to tears, I couldn't believe what he was saying. Just a few days after my father's funeral, my husband decided we should move out of our home. It was a shock because my emotions were still raw from saying goodbye to Dad. He didn't seem to understand my grief and chose our new place without asking how I felt. Surprisingly, it was a villa my father had left me. When we got there, my in-laws had already moved in. I'm Victoria, 29 years old, a product designer with my own successful business. Matthew and I have been married for 5 years. My career is going great, and I'm financially stable enough to own our apartment. Throughout our relationship, my husband felt insecure because I earned more than him. Instead of being happy for me, he saw it as a competition, acting immaturely and choosing rivalry over support. I had hoped for his understanding during this tough time, but instead, our new home felt like a battleground of emotions. My father used to tell me not to worry about him and to focus on my marriage, but I believed it was important to spend time with him while we could. As time went on, I found it hard to hide my frustration with my husband. In the beginning, our love was strong, and we were happy together. But his insensitive remarks about my father's illness changed everything. It was difficult to accept this new side of him. My husband and I both worked from home, but he thought having me around was distracting, so I rented an office space and started commuting. It was convenient because it was on my way to the hospital where my father was being treated. Meanwhile, my husband stayed home all day and left all the chores to me. Juggling work, taking care of my father, and managing the house wore me out. Every day, I came home to find a mess and dirty dishes left by my husband. He seemed oblivious to my exhaustion and lived selfishly. Living with him made me realize he lacked empathy, leaving me feeling terribly alone. Then my father passed away. We had sold our family home as we had discussed with him. Despite being busy with funeral arrangements, my husband seemed distant, often on his phone or disappearing altogether. "Matthew, please help me, especially now," I begged, but he just got another work call. After hanging up, he laughed about all the calls he was getting. My anger and disappointment towards him grew deeper, especially with the sudden loss of my father. He became even colder, and I felt overwhelmingly sad. On the day of the funeral, he spent a long time talking to his parents away from everyone else. When they returned, they were smirking, which made me feel more isolated as others noticed their behavior. Despite everything, the cremation, burial, and inheritance processes went smoothly and the funeral ended well. After my father's death, my husband casually suggested, "Let's move in with my parents starting today. They're my parents, so it should be fine, right? If you don't agree, maybe we should think about divorce," he said with a laugh. But I couldn't stay calm after such an unreasonable proposal, especially while grieving. "How can we live there? We don't have any extra rooms in this apartment, do we?" I questioned. Actually, one room in our apartment served as an office and storage for my husband's work stuff. Since we didn't have kids, he used it freely. "We have that villa you inherited," he replied, smiling. I was shocked. Even though we had sold our family home, the villa held special memories for both my father and me. It was a place I wanted to keep as a tribute to him. But my husband didn't seem to care about my feelings and kept pushing for his own way. Living in that villa would be really tough for me. I tried to explain, but he didn't seem to listen. His parents had already ended their lease and decided to move into the villa. It seemed they had planned this during my father's funeral. Attracted by its space and peaceful location, their move was already in progress, and I felt like any objections I had would be pointless. Every time I tried to talk about my feelings, my husband would get annoyed. "You're always thinking about yourself. You've been away from home so much because of your father's illness and those sudden emergencies. Do you realize how much I've had to put up with because of your obsession with your father?" His words were harsh and unsympathetic, making my world even darker. "Now that your father has passed, you should listen to me," he went on. "It took him a whole year to die, which was way too long." His cold, heartless comments left me reeling. I didn't want to believe that this was who my husband truly was, but it was becoming painfully clear. He had little regard for my father or me. I remembered the pain on my father's face as he lay in the hospital bed. He would never have wanted me to abandon his memory just to obey my husband's insensitive demands. My husband's lack of empathy was crushing, and I felt more and more alone in my grief and in my battle to honor my father's legacy. In that moment, any love I had for my husband vanished. My heart ached as I considered his apparent excitement about gaining the villa while I was supposed to be grieving for my father. Despite the storm of emotions inside me, I kept my composure and cautioned him, "You may think living in the villa is a good idea now, but you might regret it later." He seemed determined, so reluctantly I agreed to his plan. Taking only a few essentials, I left our home. My husband looked puzzled by my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, "I'll get the rest later." Honestly, I had no desire to say another word to him. It hurt to face my in-laws, who seemed to have eagerly awaited my father's death and were now moving into the villa with enthusiasm. I followed my husband in silence. The one thing I couldn't bear was the thought of my beloved place being subject to his whims. The villa, a single-family home near the sea, sat in an average neighborhood but was still conveniently close to the city center. Its land held great value. Stepping out of the station, memories of my childhood flooded back. My mother was alive then, and I remembered my father carrying me home on his back after I fell asleep on the train. Arriving at the villa, I found my in-laws already inside. Suspicion crept in. It seemed my husband had secretly given them a key without telling me. This realization made me even more uneasy. The fact that my in-laws had planned their move without consulting anyone only added to my distrust. As I looked around, as I watched my in-laws, I could see the excitement in their eyes as they imagined their new life in our family home, the villa. It was filled with sturdy furniture carefully chosen by my father, with eclectic European-style furnishings likely picked out by my mother, each piece holding sentimental value. Yet, they seemed oblivious to the true beauty of the villa. Isn't it perfect? Goodbye cramped apartment living. We're blessed to call this place home now, they exclaimed. The view from the second floor was truly breathtaking. It reminded me of my father's quiet pride in this special place, a stark contrast to my in-laws' insensitive excitement. Amid their excitement over what they dubbed the marvelous House of Secrets, my husband and his parents' enthusiastic comments only grated on my nerves. It seemed they were completely ignoring the emotional weight of my father's passing, treating the villa as nothing more than a fortunate inheritance. The location and the house are both flawless. We're lucky your father left us this magnificent villa. We owe him our thanks, my husband remarked thoughtlessly, sharing laughs with his parents as they cracked open beers to celebrate their new living situation. As I prepared snacks for them, cherished memories of moments spent with my parents around the dining table felt overshadowed and tainted by the current atmosphere. I chose to bury my emotions and soldier through the night. The next morning, the mood was abruptly shattered by my mother-in-law's piercing scream echoing through the villa. As I hurried to see what had happened, I found her on the bathroom floor, gripping her foot with a panicked expression. The floor just gave way under me, she gasped, still shaken from the shock. My husband and father-in-law looked puzzled. The floor seems fine. You probably just slipped, they suggested casually, brushing off her concerns. They examined the area she pointed to, but the floorboards appeared smooth and perfectly aligned. However, she insisted, I'm certain the floor collapsed. As they continued their cursory inspection, I intervened. Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor? I asked, surprised. They all focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping forward, I pressed down on the discolored section with my slippered foot, and immediately the floorboard made a distinct sound and slightly sank. But the moment I lifted my foot, it snapped back into place. What was that? They exclaimed simultaneously. If someone stepped on it without knowing, they'd think the floor had collapsed. Look, the floor sinks a bit. It's like a trap, I clarified. That's dangerous. Is there something wrong with this house? They reacted, suddenly concerned. Their previous disregard for the sentimental value of the villa to me seemed momentarily forgotten as they faced the unexpected reality of its physical quirks. I calmly explained the situation, and they all looked at me with surprise and skepticism. It's not a flaw, I assured them. My father deliberately installed these features. This house is what you might call a mechanical mansion or a trick house. Why would he do that? They asked, perplexed. Well, my father was a huge fan of ninjas. He invested a lot of time and money in this villa, which was not only his pride and joy, but also a showcase of his creativity, I explained. As a child, I often came here while he worked on the house's mechanisms or added new ones. That's why the villa is full of traps and clever contraptions, like a shelf you shouldn't touch, a floorboard that drops when stepped on, a door that only opens in a specific sequence, hidden doors, and even secret rooms. This house is a reflection of my father's dreams and his inventive spirit developed over many years. Of course, this place is familiar to me, having visited since childhood and learned from my father how to navigate all these traps. I have no trouble with them. But it's a different story for my husband and in-laws who are unfamiliar with it. I warned you that living in this villa would be challenging. I also mentioned it's a place filled with my father's memories. My father's fascination with ninja gadgets was widely known among our relatives. What surprised me was that my husband and his parents had been oblivious to it. At first, my husband claimed he hadn't heard about it, but now he was speechless. My in-laws were equally taken aback by this revelation. With our apartment lease already canceled and nowhere else to go, they looked to my husband for guidance. Amid their confusion, both my father-in-law and husband accidentally triggered another trap, causing them to tumble. Seeing them sprawled on the ground, I couldn't help but chuckle. "Feel free to stay as long as you like," I said, my tone more sarcastic than sincere. They had been enchanted by the villa's luxury, ignoring my warnings and showing no interest in my father's hobbies. Now their oversight was catching up with them. Even my explanations about the trap dangers seemed to go unheard. "This won't be a problem. We'll adjust," my husband replied, trying to sound confident. I smiled knowingly, understanding his attempt but also aware of the challenges they would face in a house filled with my father's intricate contraptions. I informed them that I would return to the apartment to prepare for our move. However, my real intention was to stay behind. I needed some time alone to go through my father's belongings, finding comfort in the quiet. It gave me the space to gradually regain a sense of optimism and start envisioning my future. In just 2 days, my husband and in-laws had had enough of life in the villa. Meanwhile, my father's villa had become a minor attraction in the neighborhood. It was regularly featured in local newsletters as the trick mansion nestled in the residential area. Whenever the villa was occupied, curious locals and visitors, drawn by its reputation, would come to see the famous house. I remembered times when strangers toured the villa and local children played around it, bringing energy and liveliness to the place. My father had listed both the villa's and our former home's phone numbers in the newsletters. But now that the family home's number was inactive, any inquiries would be redirected to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was fluent in foreign languages, which made it easy for me to handle calls from international visitors. However, my husband and in-laws struggled with this. They couldn't understand foreign languages and were already overwhelmed by the challenging lifestyle of navigating the house's many traps. Exhausted, sleep-deprived, and overwhelmed by the constant stream of unexpected visitors and challenging phone calls, they stumbled back to the apartment. "Why don't we all just live in this apartment together? Consider it," they suggested, desperate to escape the villa. They had eagerly anticipated inheriting the villa after my father's passing, but ironically, they couldn't handle living there for even 2 days. Instead of offering them tea, I handed my husband the divorce papers already filled out and stamped. "There's no way we can live together. If you understand, please leave quickly," I explained with a heavy sigh. I couldn't forgive him for his insensitivity and the way he had dismissed my feelings without discussion or explanation. He had unilaterally decided we would live with his parents. He had never shared household responsibilities with me before and had comfortably left them all to me. During our time at the villa, I felt trapped and overwhelmed, yet he seemed completely indifferent to my struggles. Facing my husband and his parents in our apartment, I realized I couldn't continue living with someone so self-centered. His actions had spoken louder than any promises he could make. "What's going on? You used to love me, right?" he asked, puzzled by my cold demeanor. I couldn't help but scoff at his naive question. How can I love someone who secretly wished for my father's death and celebrated when he passed? I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. I handed him the divorce papers and firmly instructed all 3 of them to leave the apartment. "First of all, this is my apartment. If anyone should leave, it's you," I asserted. When my husband raised his voice, disregarding the disturbance it caused our neighbors, I reminded him calmly, "Victoria, I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't leave quietly. Remember, this apartment is in my name." They fell silent, realizing the seriousness of the situation. They had relied on me for financial support, and now, with little of their own, they faced a harsh reality. Determined to cut ties before they could start their lengthy persuasions, I watched them leave. Neither my husband nor my in-laws had much in savings. After being kicked out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, they ended up in a cheap, low-quality apartment, struggling to get by. The old apartment was so much better, they often complained. Initially, my husband felt guilty and apologized repeatedly. However, as time passed, his guilt turned into resentment towards his parents. Because of their age, they didn't work much, and their attempts were short-lived. Eventually, they used up all their savings and pension. The constant arguments drove a wedge between them as a family. The thin walls of their new apartment barely contained their daily disagreements. Even when they received noise complaints, they refused to apologize. Instead, they responded with hostility, making themselves unpopular with the neighbors. It seemed inevitable, but they would have to find another place to live soon. My husband, who had once enjoyed the convenience of working from home, now found himself in a cramped space with no proper workspace. This severely impacted his ability to focus, and as a result, his reputation and sales suffered. He struggled to make ends meet with a late-night job at a convenience store and was considering taking on multiple part-time jobs just to get by. In moments of clarity, my in-laws realized that letting their son make decisions for them had been their biggest mistake. During their frequent arguments, they blamed the villa's traps and each other. "If you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this mess," they would argue, pointing fingers but never acknowledging their own roles in their downfall. After the divorce, my career as a product designer took a significant leap forward. To cope with the grief of my father's passing and the chaos that ensued, I poured my creativity into designing with a unique twist, incorporating ninja-inspired elements inspired by my father's interests. I shared these designs on social media, where they quickly gained popularity. To my surprise, a major cosmetics company reached out, intrigued by my designs. They wanted me to create packaging with an Asian flair, incorporating ninja themes. Embracing the project, I saw it as a way to honor my father's memory. It turned out to be a huge success, propelling my career to new heights. I found solace in sharing updates at my parents' graves, telling them about my achievements and how their legacy continued to inspire my work. I decided to keep the villa, transforming it into a unique mechanical house filled with memories of my father. I organized tours and made slight adjustments to ensure it was safe for visitors, allowing locals and tourists to explore and enjoy it for free. Before long, the house garnered significant media attention. The income from this exposure was invaluable, helping to cover its maintenance costs. Moreover, articles about the house were translated into different languages, garnering support from international fans, including elderly enthusiasts who shared my father's passion for ninjas. I devoted myself to maintaining this enchanting place. The mechanical house buzzed with activity, especially popular among local children. "Is this the famous mechanical house? Where are the tricks? Show us," they'd eagerly inquire. With the help of local volunteers, we ensured everyone could play safely. Foreign tourists, in particular, were captivated by features like the hidden floorboard and secret doors. While losing my father and the upheaval of inheriting the villa led to my divorce, the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has evolved into a treasure trove of memories that I now share with loved ones and visitors alike. It has also sparked a personal transformation, propelling me forward with renewed optimism and hope.
When I got to the next beautiful spot in my rental car, my mother-in-law called. As if she had been there the whole time, it was my wife's mom. Then I asked, "Hello, Mrs. Johnson, what's up?" With a knowing look at my husband David. On the other end, her voice was crazy. "Leave David alone right now. Get your clothes in a bag and go to the bus stop by the rocks." "Tell me what you're talking about, Mrs. Johnson. David is going to hit you. He's hiding a gun in the car." That's the gain she was following. I can't believe David would. "Okay, I'll leave right away." Even though my answer was a little flat, it seemed to have persuaded her. She hung up right away. "My name is Emily Johnson, and I'm 29 years old. I work in an office. David and I got married last year, but because of the COVID outbreak, we only recorded our marriage. Because we've been able to travel since the plague is over, we're planning our late vacation. Our bosses were flexible and let us take time off for our vacation. We picked a national park because we wanted to take lots of pictures, even though we haven't been married in a while. David likes to edit videos for fun, while I like to take pictures of landscapes. We've even talked about making a YouTube account just for landscape movies. Since we got married, our life has been quiet but happy, but there has been one worry. Mrs. Johnson, David's mom. Her son David has always made her happy. Whenever David and I talked about getting married, she always seemed to be against me. Her sneaky advances against me in meetings happen all the time, and what's worse is that she does them without David knowing. Insidiously, she would disparage me whenever I received compliments or expressed myself during a family gathering. "Emily, did you make this stew? There's no one else like this dish around here, but it tastes good." That tastes really good. Could you tell me how to make the stew? I'd like to make it at home if it's easy. Did you enjoy it? I'm happy. I'm going to write down the recipe right now. That's fine, Emily, but you might also want to learn some local recipes. It will make people praise you more. It works like that most of the time. She is not complimenting my one-of-a-kind stew. Instead, she is telling me to stick to the traditional recipes and not stand out. In fact, there was a lot of snark when the family left and Mrs. Johnson and I were doing the dishes alone. A frightening woman who was always striving to stand out by preparing such a salty stew and intended to give our family hypertension or something. I took a bite. Was it too salty for you? Next time, I'll use less salt. I no longer even want to eat your salty stew. Next time, do something more traditional. But when David comes around, she acts much differently. Uncle John told Emily, "Thanks for the stew recipe. Your dish seemed to be a hit with everyone." Really then? That's wonderful. What do you want to eat tomorrow? David, Emily, and I are going to make it together. She would smile and smile her way into our talk. To change the subject, it's so obvious that it's hard to be mad about it. After that, it became kind of a joke for us. The funny part is that David already knows about her double-dealing and sly jabs. I'm always in trouble with Mrs. Johnson when her son isn't around because she thinks he doesn't see. But David, my husband, already knows her and even films or records her in secret when things get too bad. David has never liked how his mother's love is too much, which is really just too much meddling. It seems to have even crushed his hopes for the future. So when we got married, David, not me, said we couldn't live together. Even though it was a happy event, Mrs. Johnson seems to believe that I was the one who lied to him. She can't see anything around her because she loves her son too much. I'm afraid she'll do something stupid soon. Another thing is that we finally chose the details for our late trip. With our interests in mind, we chose a trip through some of the country's most beautiful spots. I'm happily getting cameras and other tools ready. David is also getting a smartphone to record movies that doesn't have a SIM card. That's why we packed a bag with clothes and toiletries. On this trip, we'll be able to see mountains and drops. I want to take beautiful pictures, so we need to check the weather forecast too. That's right. Misty and beautiful landscapes are hard to describe, but I really hope it's sunny today. As we continued to get ready, we laughed together. But Mrs. Johnson still gets in the way, even now. That was a call. Like I said, it's Mrs. Johnson. "Hello," I said when I picked up the phone in front of David. I quickly put it on speakers. "Hi, Kate, Emily. Are you really going to go on the trip with David? You've been married for more than a year, and now you're taking a honeymoon? What do you think?" It looks like she doesn't want me to go on vacation with my husband. To deal with this, the best thing to do is show off your trip. Well, we finally don't have to follow any rules. David's business and mine have both agreed to let us take time off for our vacation, which we're going to make the most of. She took my bait and became my wife. What do you mean, have fun? It's probably just a bad trip and a cheap hotel. I feel bad for David. The things Mrs. Johnson said made David frown and keep quiet. David was the one who planned this trip, not a travel agency. I changed how I spoke after seeing David's face. No, it's not a cheap hotel at all. David set everything up. We're staying at a very fancy hotel with a great view. The food is also 5 stars, but the prices are very low. I spoke nicely on purpose to make Mrs. Johnson angry. I'm always getting picked on, and this time she was making fun of the trip that David planned. A really high-end hotel. Why do you want to go with David? I want to go on that trip. David would want to show me how thankful he is for his family. After hearing about the very fancy hotel, she couldn't keep quiet. Now she's saying she wants to go on the trip herself. This is not the kind of honeymoon that a mother would crash. It's not going to happen. It's rude to step in on your son and daughter-in-law's long-awaited vacation. We'll make sure you have a souvenir. Saying goodbye, I hung up the phone, picturing Mrs. Johnson's angry face. I laughed meanly, and when I hung up, David had his head held up in front of me. I'm sorry about my mom, Emily. She tried to ruin our holiday, which I can't believe. She probably just wanted to express her deep affection for her son, she explained. Don't be worried about it. There was a hint of worry in my voice as I smiled at David, because I was so angry at her. I beat her at her own game, but I might have failed. What would happen if Mrs. Johnson got really excited about our vacation and started bothering us? This fear of mine turned out to be right in the end. From that point on until the trip left, Mrs. Johnson didn't say a word, not even a call. I thought she would tell David bad things about me. That also didn't happen. Even though her quiet scared me, we went on our getaway as planned. David's choice of beautiful places worked out perfectly, and I was happy with the whole thing. It was the best in every way: the view, the services, the food, everything. That's why I told Mrs. Johnson how great it was. We even asked the hotel staff to take a shot of us having dinner together. David, I'm so full. Thank you so much for setting this all up, I said as I fell asleep on the hotel bed. It felt so soft and cozy on the bed. David, my husband, was very happy to see me rolling around in bed. He said, I'm glad you like it. Let's go to the spa after you've had a chance to rest. I'll look at the pictures and movies we took today while we wait. The health spa. What a wonderful place. David suddenly raised his voice. He had been opening his laptop and watching me enjoy the soft bed. I finally asked, what's going on here? When I heard something strange in David's voice, I got out of bed and looked at his computer. Our plan for today was to rent a car and get around. We parked the rental car and took pictures and movies at every beautiful place we went. In some places, you could see the rental car in the background. That wasn't a problem in and of itself, but there were times when a strange person, who looked like a small woman, was hanging out near the rental car. Even though we couldn't see her face, we thought the strange person was a small woman. The suspect was opening the car door every once in a while. Oh, look at this. Because we were only there for a short time, we didn't lock the car, David said in a low voice through the screen. I knew what kind of hat the suspicious person was wearing. Hey, this hat. Doesn't Mrs. Johnson have one like this? When I said, yes, Mrs. Johnson has a similar hat, David's face went pale. That's correct. This is my mom's hat. David and I looked at the computer screen with wide eyes. The person who seemed sketchy was putting something black into the rental car. They looked like Mrs. Johnson. She looked like she was taking something out of the trip bag that she had left in the rental car. Then, after some time, the strange person left without taking anything. Something was put in the bag for the trip. I quickly threw it out. It had a strange weight to it. I didn't notice the change in weight because the bellman carried it for us when we got to the hotel. It was a bag with clothes and toiletries in it, but nothing important. It looked like nothing was stolen. After that, a strange thing came out of the bottom of the bag. What came out shocked David and me. What is this? You're kidding me. We were both very tired when we left the hotel the next morning. Because of the amazing thing that came out of the bag the day before, we were very busy. The phone almost always rang at the exact moment we got to the next beautiful spot in the rental car. It came from Mrs. Johnson. David was on the phone, so I told him to pick up. Hello, Mrs. Johnson, what's going on? The person on the other end of the phone from Mrs. Johnson sounded very upset. Get away from my kid right now. Get the bag with extra clothes in it and go to the Cape's bus stop. How does she know there's a bus stop close to the Cape where we're on vacation? What about our luggage? How does she know about things like the bag with the extra clothes? She called at just the right time, so I think she's probably hiding and watching somewhere. There were a lot of confusing parts of the call, so I asked Mrs. Johnson for a reason. Tell me what you're talking about, Mrs. Johnson. David is getting ready to attack you? He has a gun hidden in the car. Oh, I see. That's the case. I pretended to follow Mrs. Johnson's lead. Even though I already knew everything, it's not possible. David is hitting me. Okay, I get it. I'm leaving now. Even though my answer was a little stiff, I think I was able to trick Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson hung up right away. I waved to David, who was driving. and then took the bag and went to the bus stop. I didn't forget to act scared, of course. After that, I called the cops. After about 5 minutes, I got to the Capes bus stop, where an investigator in an unmarked police car met me. Well, yesterday's prediction came true. The agent looked upset and said, "I never thought you'd really call it in. I'm truly sorry that I took part in this joke. Please come with me. I think David should have caught Mrs. Johnson by now." As I drove back to the rental car, the investigator followed me in his plainclothes car. Yes, I could hear Mrs. Johnson's words from where we parked the rental car. "Hey, David, how did you know where I was?" It looked like Mrs. Johnson had no idea that her evil plan would be found out ahead of time. "My husband found her hiding in the shade of a gazebo in the parking lot and caught her. Not right now. Today, I won't forgive you." Mrs. Johnson was scared by the way her husband looked like a demon. She was even more shocked when she saw me come back with the detective. As Mrs. Johnson had planned, I had a travel bag in my hand. The moment Mrs. Johnson saw it, she yelled, "Officer, arrest that woman right away. There's a gun in that bag," she says. "She wants to use it to kill my son." Mrs. Johnson yelled at me in that manner, displaying a proud expression as she did so. I stood still in front of Mrs. Johnson and dumped the bag's contents on the ground. The pants were wrapped up in a small bag so that the men wouldn't be able to see them. While Mrs. Johnson looked for something, she couldn't find it. "What? Where is the gun? It should be there since I put it there yesterday. Is this the gun you are looking for?" The detective showed Mrs. Johnson a picture. It was a picture of a hunting gun put in a plastic bag. Upon seeing the picture the detective showed, Mrs. Johnson's face went pale. "That shooting gun belonged to my late father-in-law, didn't it? Honestly, how did you manage to open the gun safe? When I found it yesterday, I thought my heart would stop. I gave it to the cops right away after calling them." Mrs. Johnson clenched her teeth and looked down when she heard my voice and the voice of my husband. "Oh, Emily is to blame because it was in her bag. It has nothing to do with me." Mrs. Johnson began yelling out of panic. My husband and I both let out big sighs. The officer then came up to Mrs. Johnson with a big smile on his face. "Yes, we had to ask Emily about it since it was in her bag. Yesterday was supposed to be a holiday, but we questioned her for hours." "Why did you know that Emily's gun was in her room bag?" Even though the detective was happy, his voice was soft. "I can see why he's mad. Besides, the shooting gun was taken out without permission, even though it wasn't trained. It was in Emily's bag, though." Because Mrs. Johnson couldn't face the detective, she desperately tried to explain herself. "Oh, so you saw Emily's travel preparations, but you and Emily's family are separated, aren't you?" "Of course, we're separated, and we haven't let her into our house for a year." When that was said, Mrs. Johnson yelled back, "Don't speak out of turn." The police officer pressed Mrs. Johnson even more. "Oh no, were you watching Emily's house? No, that's not a good thing to do. You need to go to the station with us." Mr. Johnson freaked out when she heard the detective's line, which sounded like it came straight from a police show. "No, I wasn't spying. So you can't take me against my will. I put that gun in there." "Oh, she told everyone on her own." "Well, I had already said it earlier when I turned the bat inside out." Before this, the detective had been happy, but now he wasn't. "All right, a confession. You'll be coming with us on your own because you broke the gun rule." Mrs. Johnson was shocked when the detective spoke. "What? Why? Didn't I say I wasn't spying?" When Mrs. Johnson spoke out against it, her son got very angry. "It makes sense, Mom. The gun your dad gave you was yours, but you don't have a shooting license." There would be no problem if the father-in-law, who had a shooting license, carried it properly for the right reason. You can't take it out of the gun safe because you don't have a shooting license. Mrs. Johnson didn't seem to know anything about gun rules or how to handle guns. I don't know how she got it this far without an accident, even though the live ammo was kept separate and not put into the gun. Even so, Mrs. Johnson still refused. But it had to be in that woman's bag when it was found at the hotel. That woman took it from my house. I'm not to blame. His mother, Mrs. Johnson, was acting badly, so her son got angry. I recorded yesterday when Mom put a gun in her rental car. Of course, I gave it to the cops. What David said made Mrs. Johnson weak in the knees. What? How? How did you learn about it? She was so angry that tears filled her eyes. I told them instead of him. Yesterday, David was recording and got a shot of the parking lot. We didn't see it at the time, but we did see it when we watched the video at the hotel. Mrs. Johnson could no longer disagree with what I said. At this point, the officer told Mrs. Johnson, who was shocked, "Now, Mrs. Kate Johnson, we'd like you to come with us to the station because we think you broke gun laws." When David said those words, Mrs. Johnson's face turned sad. "Why, David? Why is that woman better than me? Are you leaving your mom?" The detective pushed Mrs. Johnson, who was yelling, into the empty police car. "You might not want to make a fuss. When I called the house yesterday to check the gun's serial number, your son's grandma, who I think is an old woman, was very angry. As soon as the agent said that, Mrs. Johnson calmed down. That grandmother is David's grandmother. She is old, but she is still healthy and doesn't show any signs of dementia. She's pretty much in charge of the Johnson family. At this point, Mrs. Johnson is completely giving in to her. She's the head of the family, but she's not mean to other people. When I go to see my in-laws, she's always so happy to see me and calls me Emily dear. She is nice, but Mrs. Johnson has to do her jobs the right way. Her own room and bathroom were taken care of by her. What made her so mad must have been pretty tough," I said under my breath. The detective told me, "It looks like your husband's grandmother has been keeping the shooting gun as a keepsake since your father-in-law died. But the other day, the box with the memory in it was broken into. When they found out that, it caused the current fuss. Her anger was unbearable." I see. To get the key, Mrs. Johnson must have searched her whole room. I told her it's easy to see how angry she would be that her son's keepsake was broken. After handing over the rifle at the station, I asked to take a picture of it for her so she could at least keep a photograph as a memento. I said, "My husband's grandmother was mean to Mrs. Johnson. She had cried and said sorry to me and David. A family member who went to pick her up said that she yelled at Mrs. Johnson in a way that could be heard all over the neighborhood for more than 30 minutes. Oh, your grandmother really does get that mad. That's why Mom always did what Grandma said. Now everyone in the neighborhood knows what Mom did wrong," I said. Yes, thanks to his grandma's lecture, the incident became widely known, and Mrs. Johnson could no longer walk the streets. When his grandmother found out that David had broken up with her, she got permission from the police station and the prosecutor's office to send Mrs. Johnson to a farm run by a relative in the Nebraska mountains, in an area that looks like a basin. She could come back, but it would take 3 hours to get here by car. She was working so hard on the farm that she couldn't possibly get away. After some time, it turned out that I was pregnant. The family, my husband, and his grandma were all very happy. His grandmother was already excited about having a great-grandchild and started to work on making her legs stronger. My husband and her are going to fight to see who can take the baby for walks in the pram. I hope she doesn't drop the great-grandchild while holding it. She has also begun to improve the strength of her upper body. It's nice to see her getting her mood back. She was really down because of Mrs. Johnson's fuss. My husband and I are getting all of the baby stuff together today. I'd like to live with your grandmother if it's possible. She's really excited about it, and it looks like she'll live a long time following the birth, taking care of the child with grandma. I told him, we'll figure it out some way. Well, if she lives longer, I'll be happy to. My husband said, I'll talk to grandma about it. I took out the camera. I rubbed my belly and said, when the baby is born, I'm going to take lots of pictures of the baby, my husband, his grandmother, and the rest of the family.
9 people. That's a lot. It feels like a whole baseball team. When I was young, I always dreamed of having a cute house with a white dog, just like in storybooks. But real life isn't always so nice. I finally got my own house, but when I came back from work, it was full of people, like a dormitory. I'm not happy about it. My name's Mary, and I'm 32 years old. I work in an office. I've been really focused on my job, but lately all my friends have been getting married one after another. Buying wedding gifts has been expensive. I started feeling like I needed to find someone too, so I started going on dates. Mary, when are you going to give me grandkids? Every time I went home, my dad David would ask this, and it made me really uncomfortable. So, I started visiting less. My mom died when I was young, so I grew up with my dad, my brother, and my grandparents. My brother got married early and lives near our old home. He has 2 daughters, my cute nieces. I already have nieces at my brother's. Isn't that enough? But we always argued about it. Then my dad got in a car accident. When I reached the hospital, he was in bad shape. He passed away quietly while my brother's family and I were there. Dad, I wanted you to meet someone. I had a boyfriend introduced by a friend. He just proposed and we decided to marry. He liked to show off a bit, but he was kind. His name was Richard. Now that both my parents are gone and my brother has his own family, it does feel lonely, doesn't it? I said softly while petting my cat Lucy, just back from the funeral. Mary, you're not alone. You're part of my family now, Richard said, holding my hand gently. He was worried about me and came to check on how I was doing. Let's make a happy home together, I thought. Maybe I could find simple happiness. Little did I know what was coming. Welcome. It's a bit crowded though. I went to Richard's family home for a meeting. Patricia, his mom, was lively and straightforward. I felt a bit nervous walking in, thinking it would just be his parents, but there were lots of people, in-laws, step-grandparents, Richard's brother Charles, his wife Sarah, and their kids Thomas and John. Nice to meet you. That's a big group. The house, built by Richard's dad James, was a bit old and worn, but the family was so welcoming, it calmed my nerves. On the way home in the car, I mentioned how many people there were. Christmas or Thanksgiving must be quite something, I said to Richard, who chuckled in response. It really is crowded. I can't believe they live like this every day. I was genuinely surprised to hear this. Richard's family home was never big, and I thought it was just for gatherings. 8 people in that house, wow, Richard said. Originally, it was just his in-laws and step-grandparents. But then Charles, who couldn't keep a job, moved in with Sarah and their kids without asking. Charles will probably move out once he finds a job, Richard said, laughing. Back then, I thought Richard's family just had some challenges. After we got married, Richard and I, along with our cat Lucy, lived a peaceful life without kids yet. Richard helped around the house, and Lucy liked us. Charles and his family still lived in that crowded house. The walls were covered in children's drawings, and Patricia laughed, saying she stopped trying to clean them long ago. Sarah, Charles's wife, always looked tired. She was older than Charles and close to my age, so we became friends quickly. Hey Sarah, hurry up. Mary, don't just stand there. We're out of beer. Whenever I visited, it felt like Sarah and I were the only ones not sitting down. We were always busy, and I wondered if this was our fate. But the idea of Sarah doing this every day was scary. Sarah worked full-time to make up for Charles, who didn't work much. I was hesitant, but I finally asked, have you thought about leaving him? I've thought about it. It's tough. But we have kids, and he used to be kind, Sarah replied. I couldn't see any good in Charles, but I guess they had their reasons. That's what I thought. Around this time, Richard suggested, how about we build our own house? I was surprised but happy. I've always dreamed of living in a cute house like in storybooks with a white dog in the yard. I had never told anyone, but when I told Richard, he said, that sounds great. We spent our free time visiting model homes, choosing a builder, and a year later, our dream home was ready. We need to keep up with the mortgage, Richard said. Definitely, I replied with a smile. On the first weekend in our new home, Richard's family came over for a housewarming party. Here, Joseph, give them the gift. We're coming in. Oh, what a nice house. Patricia seemed really happy, like it was her own place. I smiled politely. Look, it's a party. Then Joseph handed me 2 cans of beer like he just bought them. Charles wandered around and found our bedroom, saying, this bed is so comfy. He jumped on it, and the kids joined in, getting excited. Look, there's a cat. They ran around chasing our cat Lucy. Lucy is friendly, but she's never met so many people at once, so she got scared and hid in the back of the room. Poor Lucy. I looked at Charles and Richard, who were already busy with the party. Mary, Patricia wants appetizers soon. Can I use your kitchen? And sorry about scaring Lucy, Sarah said, feeling bad. Why is someone as nice as her with a guy like that? I care for Sarah like a sister. I'll take care of it, Sarah. You relax, I said, but she still helped with cooking while managing the kids. The step-grandparents were quiet, almost like dolls, not saying much. But they said, "Nice home, right, James?" "Yeah, sorry for the noise," James replied, even though the loud ones were the in-laws. The step-grandparents were the sensible ones in that house. So the odd ones were the in-laws, Charles, and probably my husband Richard too. After that, the in-laws and Charles started coming over almost every weekend. They partied loudly till dawn, and we got complaints from neighbors and even the police. Once Sarah, the step-grandparents, and the kids hadn't visited since the housewarming, but the in-laws put me to work without hesitation. I was really stressed out. Richard also started showing his true colors. Once, when I had a cold and asked him to pick up dinner, he came back with hamburgers. "I can't eat this right now," I said, feeling weak. Instead of getting mad, Richard said, "You need to eat to get better, Mary." What if I had the energy to eat that? I wouldn't have asked for help, I thought to myself. Once, when Richard was sick, I sarcastically asked if he wanted a hamburger. He got upset and said, "No, that's ridiculous." In short, this family was selfish and lacked empathy. They were in for a wake-up call. Enjoy your freedom while you can. You'll get what you deserve, I thought with a wicked smirk. A few days later, I had a business trip planned. "I'm off," I said happily to Richard on the morning of my departure. "Is your trip today?" "Sarah's also away on business," Richard said. "Really? I didn't know. What a coincidence," I replied. "Mom said they'd be in trouble without someone to take care of the house." Richard laughed mockingly, making me think he was being mean. I was busy during my trip. Days went by quickly, and before I knew it, a lot of time had passed. A big typhoon hit, and I contacted Richard. "We're okay, but the family home had some serious leaks," he said. I understood, thinking about their old house. The day I came back home arrived. As I walked from the bus stop, I heard loud laughter in the neighborhood. "Is someone having a barbecue? It's so loud. The neighbors will complain." Wait, what? I was shocked. The noise was definitely coming from my house. As I cautiously opened the door, I found bags in the entrance and graffiti on the walls. I was stunned. "Hey, Mary, welcome back," a drunk Richard said. Frustrated, I went to the living room and found drunk in-laws and Charles while Sarah made food in the kitchen. The step-grandparents were quiet, and the kids were drawing on the walls. There was also a woman I didn't know. Overwhelmed, I tried to stay calm. "What's going on?" I asked Richard. "Didn't I tell you? The family home had leaks, so they're staying here for a while," Richard said. "Who was away?" "The in-laws," Charles and Richard decided. "Why don't we live here?" Richard proudly suggested. Even with this explanation, I was stunned into silence. "It's okay. We're family. We have extra rooms." "No problem," the in-laws added, smiling. "Don't worry, Mary. The walls got a bit dirty, but it's just kid stuff," Charles said casually. "And who is that woman?" I asked about the woman on the sofa, playing with her phone. "Oh, that's Karen, a friend of me and Sarah," Richard explained. "Yes, that's right," she said with a smile. This girl Karen was kicked out by her parents and Richard said she could stay. "Thanks in advance," Karen replied, leaving me utterly confused. In our not-so-big living room, there were 9 adults and 2 children. The room was messy with scribbles on the walls far from the new house look. The family was loud like a dormitory. I couldn't help but lose my temper. Seriously, 9 people is too many. Are you guys planning to start a baseball team or something? Then I realized something. "Hey, where's Lucy?" I asked, but no one knew where our cat was. Dad opened the window to smoke, and Thomas said Lucy ran away. Charles looked at him angrily. "What were you thinking?" "I told you to be careful with the windows," I said, nearly in tears. Richard, looking annoyed, said, "It's just a cat. We can get another one. If you're unhappy, we can just get divorced," he said with disdain. "You said divorce?" I asked. "Yes, I did. I might not if you apologize," Richard said confidently. "Oh, really? Well, then, here, write this," I said, slamming down the divorce papers I had prepared. My section was already filled out. "I got my bags from my room." "Why haven't you written it yet?" "I'm busy," I said coolly to Richard. They were shocked. Angrily, Patricia said, "Richard, divorce her already. We've built the house, so she's useless now," realizing too late. Richard said, "You'll regret it." but I had no regrets. You're the one who'll struggle. Just write the papers, I said, taking them and giving some to Charles. He laughed. When did I marry you? Looking at the filled wife's section, Charles said, Hey, Sarah. This is Sarah, coldly. I'm divorcing you right now, Sarah said firmly. Charles exclaimed, Sarah bites the hand that feeds you, huh, Joseph? He was talking nonsense. From my perspective, Sarah had been treated like a servant in her in-laws' house. Charles took most of her earnings, leaving little for living expenses. This allowed Charles to do whatever he wanted, and the woman in front of me was Charles's mistress. Mary, I think my husband is cheating. Sarah had confided in me before we planned our divorces. Sarah endured it for her children, but Charles started selling their belongings. She reached her limit. Sarah told me everything. Furious, we started planning our divorces. Sarah gathered evidence of the affair. Her recent business trip was a lie. We looked for a new place to live halfway. Like me, Sarah had no family to turn to, but a friend offered her a job in another state. It was a good opportunity, and our preparations went smoothly. All that was left was presenting the divorce papers. I want to get out of that hellish house, Sarah said, determined. She had a strong core but had been manipulated by her in-laws. Thinking it would be suspicious to return together, Sarah went back first. She soon contacted me, informing me about the takeover at my house and Charles's mistress moving in. All our actions until then were a performance. Knowing what was happening, I told Sarah, we're not living there anymore. Let the kids draw on the walls all they want. That's what I told her. Charles, thinking he could openly live with his mistress, happily signed the divorce papers. Let's go, Sarah. James and everyone, it's time to leave. The step-grandparents stood up and followed Sarah and her children to the door. Living with people like you, I had given up on life. But Sarah opened my eyes, James said, glaring at the family, and left with his great-grandchildren. The in-laws had been taking money from the step-grandparents' pensions. They were truly awful. Well then, take care, we said as we left. You'll regret this, the family laughed, but we ignored them. Months later, Richard contacted me. Oh, I forgot to block him. I could guess the content of the call, so I answered, Mary, come back. Richard sounded desperate. I barely contained my laughter. Come back, we're strangers now, I replied calmly. Let me talk, Mary. What do you mean? Why aren't you paying the mortgage? Patricia's voice came through, probably snatching the phone from Richard. What are you talking about? I have no idea. I played dumb while Patricia sounded frustrated. Apparently, the mortgage for the house had fallen behind last month. When I pressed Richard, he claimed I hadn't been paying it. What an inconvenience. While I remained silent, Patricia kept talking like a machine gun. First of all, this house, you guys had a combined income of $755,000, right? We could have built a better house. We built this as a new home, but it's not what we expected. Originally, they had planned to take over the house. Sarah had informed me of their discussions. Yes, that's true. But with Richard's $30,000 salary, the bank wouldn't lend us more. If we had taken a joint mortgage, maybe we could have gotten a better house. Hearing this, Richard, you lied. I could hear Richard and Patricia arguing on the phone. I ignored them, ended the call, and finally blocked his number. Richard had a pretentious personality. He always wanted to impress others, especially outside his family. When he suggested building the house, I already had divorce in mind. I told him a friend's husband got a mortgage on his own. How cool is that? I heard these stories like a spell. Richard, wanting to show off, opted for a solo mortgage. I had to hold back my laughter. He probably didn't tell his family because he was afraid of them knowing the truth. But I didn't care. The house was built to Richard's taste. I had no attachment to it anymore. Richard hadn't cheated, but there were no alimony penalties in our divorce. So despite him, I left him with the mortgage debt as my revenge. Let him suffer, and I was able to rescue Sarah, whom I cared for like a sister, from that house. That was my main goal. Later, they couldn't pay the mortgage, and the new house was repossessed. But it was a mess inside, with scribbles everywhere and walls yellowed by cigarette smoke from Charles and his mistress. It didn't look like a recently built house. Richard had to rent a cheap apartment, and Joseph and Patricia ended up moving in with him. They'll probably never leave him alone like parasites. I don't care. They're strangers to me now. The only good thing about my former in-laws was that the children weren't affected. Otherwise, they were the worst. Sarah, as Charles' ex-wife, successfully claimed alimony through a lawyer. She had to borrow money but managed to pay it off. I'm glad for her. Charles and his mistress became outcasts in their community and are now missing. They haven't repaid their debts, confirming how awful they are. Sarah is happily working at her friend's place. Her kids are doing well too. I hope they find happiness this time. James and Barbara seem brighter now, like a weight has been lifted. They sold the old family home and are enjoying their retirement in a distant place with their savings. That's great news. As for me, I've requested a transfer to a local office. I was reunited with Lucy, my cat, thanks to social media. Someone in the neighborhood had found and taken care of her. It's good she's friendly now. I live alone in my late father's house with my brother's approval. I'm saving to build my dream house, and someday I hope to introduce someone special at my father's grave. Today, I'm working hard towards that goal.
Where are you? What's happening? My husband's voice sounded worried on the answering machine. My mom's in trouble. He said his mother had collapsed and was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. While getting things ready for her hospital stay, I found a shocking picture of my husband and his sister. Seeing it made me freeze, and I ran to my parents' house to escape. I've been with my husband for 3 years, but now I felt deceived. He didn't truly care about me, he just wanted a wife. I couldn't forgive him, so I decided to divorce him. My name's Sarah. I'm 32 and work at a beauty salon. 4 years ago, I felt rushed. All my friends were getting married, and I wanted to too. Hearing about their husbands and kids made me feel left out, even though they didn't mean it. I'd cry on the way home sometimes, feeling jealous. I had a boyfriend before, but I wondered if I'd ever find someone to marry. So, with 2 years left in my 20s, I threw myself into finding a husband. I tried dating apps and went to marriage events, but it was tough finding the right person. The ones I liked weren't interested in getting married, and things never progressed. I wasn't asking for much, just someone to share my life with. I only had friendships and short-lived relationships. Seeing my friends getting married one by one, I decided to join a marriage agency, even though it was pricey. I hope I find someone serious about marriage there. That's when I met Ken, my husband. He was 5 years older than me and worked for a big company. He was really good looking, and I wondered why he wasn't married yet. When I saw his profile, I just knew he was the one for me. When we first met, Ken said he wanted to get married soon, and I felt the same way. He was just as nice and polite as he seemed online, and I felt really happy around him. I told him I didn't have much education or job experience, but I liked taking care of the house. He said he was too busy with work to do chores, so he wanted to marry someone like me. I felt flattered and excited. I lived alone with my mom because she's sick, and I can't leave her by herself. Ken said if we got married, he'd like my mom to live with us. He explained it nicely, and even though I was surprised, I felt like he was being honest with me. I've dealt with older women in my job, so I felt comfortable with the idea of living with my future mother-in-law. But what mattered most to me was getting to know Ken better. He seemed to really like me, and we went on a few dates together. The more I got to know him, the more I realized Ken was a true gentleman and a kind person. I even got the chance to meet his mom over dinner. She was small and very pretty. She told me I was too good for Ken and reassured me about living with her, saying she didn't need nursing care despite her chronic illness. She suggested we go out for parfait next time instead of dining at a fancy restaurant. With her relaxed, high-pitched voice and our shared love for sweets, I felt at ease about living together. Ken was eager to get married soon, and we began dating with the intention of tying the knot. Ken was always busy with work, but he made time for me. We went on trips and spent a lot of quality time together. Even seeing him first thing in the morning, my feelings for him didn't change. He was just as refreshing as when I first met him, and I found myself liking him more and more. His mom and I became close friends, bonding over our love for sweets. Despite her needing a lot of medication, Ken's mom was energetic and youthful. She didn't mind waiting in line at popular restaurants and looked forward to trying delicious food. Sometimes I forgot about the age difference between her and Ken because we got along so well. She shared some stories about her past struggles, including her own mother-in-law's divorces. After dating for about 6 months, Ken and I got married. I was thrilled to have gotten married just before turning 30, and I felt proud of the effort I had put into finding a partner. We quickly registered our marriage and started getting ready to move in together. Then one day, Ken told me he needed to talk to me about something important. I started to feel uneasy when Ken said he needed to talk to me about something I hadn't heard before. He revealed that he had a sister named Hannah, who wasn't his biological sister. Hannah was actually the daughter of Ken's stepfather from a previous marriage. Ken's parents had divorced 5 years ago, and his father had passed away. Because Hannah didn't have any other family, Ken felt responsible for her and kept in touch. Ken wanted to invite Hannah to our wedding, but his mom strongly opposed it because she didn't like me. Despite this, Ken wanted me to meet Hannah at least once because she meant a lot to him. I was curious and a bit worried about why Ken's mom disliked Hannah, especially since she had been so kind to me. However, seeing how much Ken cared about his family, I agreed to meet her. When I met Hannah, she was very beautiful and outgoing. She told me she worked at a bar, and I couldn't understand why Ken's mom didn't like her. She was friendly and made our meeting enjoyable. During our conversation, I nervously asked Hannah about living with Ken when they were younger. They shared funny stories, and it was clear they had a close bond. They seemed like the perfect siblings. As we said goodbye, Hannah apologized for not being able to attend our wedding and wished me well as a wife. On the way home, Ken asked me not to tell his mom about meeting Hannah, as it would only cause more problems. I didn't know the exact reason behind the conflict between my mother-in-law and Hannah, but I felt it wasn't my place to get involved. So I kept my meeting with Hannah to myself and focused on our life together as a family of 3. Ken was still busy with work, often coming home late. On his days off, he'd sometimes take my mother-in-law and me out for meals. We also did household chores together and occasionally enjoyed sweets or watched movies. Overall, things seemed happy, but I did worry about my mother-in-law's health since she sometimes slept all day when she wasn't feeling well. While I was at work, I made sure to keep in touch with her regularly. However, one thing that bothered me was Ken's constant phone use. He was always glued to his phone, even bringing it into the bathroom. At first, I thought he might be addicted to games, but it became concerning when it seemed excessive. Once I tried calling him several times, but his phone was busy the whole time. When he returned home, I mentioned it, but he just said he had received a call from work. Although we had just gotten married, I couldn't shake off the feeling of curiosity and concern about his behavior. I didn't think he was cheating on me, but I couldn't help but wonder. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law didn't seem bothered by his phone habits, considering it normal. One day, I couldn't shake off a bad feeling, so I glanced at Ken's phone screen and noticed he was frequently texting someone. It seemed like they talked often. Another night, Ken came home late, and I couldn't help but wonder who he was texting at such a late hour. Trying to play it off casually, I asked him, "Who do you always talk to in the middle of the night?" After my mother-in-law went to bed, I asked him about it, but he just laughed it off, saying it was his sister. He joked if I suspected him of cheating, and I laughed along, feeling silly for worrying too much. After that, I stopped worrying about his phone habits, even though he was still busy with work and didn't have much time for me. However, I started feeling uneasy about how much time he spent with Hannah. 2 years passed, and life with the 3 of us went smoothly. My mother-in-law and I had a routine of visiting the sweet store together. We shared a close bond, and I never felt awkward about living with her. Ken's work kept him busy, and he continued to be glued to his phone, but I had gotten used to it. Despite some minor complaints, we were a happy family. Ken always made time for family events, like our wedding anniversary and my birthday. Then, one day, my mother-in-law fell sick and spent the day in bed. I checked on her frequently, and in the evening she complained of pain. I quickly called an ambulance, and she was taken to the hospital. Though I was worried, I was relieved to find out her condition wasn't critical. I informed Ken about her hospitalization, and he left work early to join us at the hospital. I decided to go home to pack some things, planning to stay with my mother-in-law at the hospital for a few days. Upon returning home, I went to my mother-in-law's room to gather her insurance card and personal seal. She had mentioned they were in the top drawer, but I couldn't find them there. So I checked the bottom drawer, where I stumbled upon a small box, thinking it might contain what I was looking for. I opened it, only to find a shockingly large number of photographs inside. As I looked through them, my heart sank. The pictures weren't of Ken and Hannah as siblings, they were of them as lovers. They were holding hands, kissing each other, and the sight made me feel sick to my stomach. I couldn't bear to look at them for long, so I closed the box. The realization hit me hard. Ken had been having an affair with Hannah all this time, and I couldn't believe it. My mind went blank, and the next thing I knew, I was running to my parents' house, clutching the box tightly. At my parents' house, my mother was surprised to see me in such distress. When she saw the contents of the box, she hugged me tightly as I broke down in tears. After a while, when I had calmed down a bit, she asked me if Ken was cheating. I explained to her that the woman in the pictures was Hannah, and the box was found in my mother-in-law's room. I hadn't even told my own mother about having a sister-in-law. I can't continue living with him, I sobbed to my mother. Of course not. You absolutely can't stay with him, she replied firmly, sharing my anger. When I checked my phone, I saw numerous missed calls from Ken and an angry voicemail asking where I was and what I was doing while his mother was in trouble. But after discovering the truth, I couldn't bring myself to respond. I was really upset, but I thought it was strange because I felt like I should be the one who's angry. So, I turned off my phone because just talking about it made me feel sick thinking about the pictures. The next day, I decided to be kind and reach out to him. I said, I need to talk to you tonight. I'll bring my mom along, so please call Hannah. He started talking a lot, saying how relieved he was that Hannah was okay. It annoyed me, so I just said, okay, see you tonight, and hung up. Right after that, I went to see my mother-in-law in the hospital. She looked happy to see me and called my name. I apologized for her feeling sick, but I needed to know the truth. I found a box in her closet and showed it to her. She started crying. She said, Sarah, I'm really sorry. Ken is my ex-husband's stepchild. 5 years ago, they told me they were in love, even though they're not related by blood. They're both my kids. I told them it wasn't right, and Hannah got upset and left. I haven't heard from her since. I should have told you earlier, but I didn't want to upset you with their old photos. Don't worry. I don't know where Hannah is now, and I'm pretty sure she's not in touch with Ken. She looked me straight in the eyes, and I could tell she was telling the truth. Ken still talks to Hannah. Actually, he introduced me to her years ago. I told my mother-in-law, and she cried again. But you're married, I pointed out. I'm sorry, it's not your fault. But I can't stay married to Ken anymore. I'm going to divorce him. Don't apologize to me. It's my mistake for not noticing. I'm sorry, she said. I couldn't hold back my tears either. I left the hospital room and headed to the house where my mom, Ken, and Hannah were waiting. When I got there, they were all waiting for me. I sat down and immediately showed them the pictures. You two were in a relationship and I'm divorcing you, I said. Ken didn't seem bothered and said, yeah, that's true. Being family and being in a relationship are different. We were happy as a family. Wasn't Mom happy too? What's wrong with that? We don't need to get divorced, he said with his usual bright smile. Hannah, I'm sorry for not telling you earlier, but I didn't mean to break up your family. I don't think we need to get divorced, she said. I was furious. Hearing them talk like that made me shake with anger. That's ridiculous. This is cheating. How can I stay in a family with someone like that? I shouted at them loudly. Hey, calm down. If you want a divorce, that's okay. I tried to be a good family member. Since you're the one asking for it, we'll make it a friendly divorce. Ken said something I didn't quite get. What? How can you call this friendly? This is a huge betrayal. I'm going to ask for alimony from both of you, I exclaimed. Okay, sure. I'll pay whatever you ask for. Just don't tell my mom. And let's say the reason for the divorce is just differences in personality. I already told your mom everything. She was upset. I told her about the divorce, Ken said. What? Why would you do that? He lost his cool and yelled loudly in response to my words. Hannah, why did you tell her too? She cried. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the alimony. Goodbye, I said as I left the house with my mother. She told me, you handled that well, and hugged me tightly. I cried loudly, letting out all my emotions into her embrace. Now I realize that Ken never really cared about me. He just wanted a wife to make his mom happy. I thought I wanted to marry him too, and maybe we were happy as a family, but I can't forgive myself for not seeing the betrayal sooner. I'm just glad I figured it out now and could get a divorce. Later, my lawyer finalized the divorce successfully. I asked for alimony from both Ken and Hannah, but Hannah didn't have money, and she was upset with Ken for only paying his share. Their relationship soured, and they decided to split up. I couldn't afford to pay the alimony, so I started working double shifts at the bar where I used to work. After my mother-in-law left the hospital, she was upset with Ken and warned him that if he ever sees Hannah again, she'll cut ties with him. Despite everything, my mother-in-law and I still keep in touch, and we sometimes go out for treats. I'm relieved that she's out of the hospital and seems to be doing well. Right now, I'm staying with my parents. I'm busy getting ready for the beauty salon where I used to work to reopen. Once things settle down a bit more, I'll move out and live on my own again. I'm not jealous anymore when I hear about my friends who are married. Until I meet someone special again, I'll just keep working hard. My mom spent a lot of my money on my sister's wedding, but I stopped it by freezing the account. I'm facing a tough situation. My mom and sister have been using me for a long time, and now it's gone too far. I want to stop them, but I worry that cutting them off completely would make life hard for them. I'm tired of always giving in to their demands. I'm 38 years old, married with 2 kids, and I've been living in Ohio for 6 years since I got married. I originally come from Houston. My childhood was tough because my parents got divorced and my dad left. When I was 10 years old, my parents split up. I was 5 when it happened. They say it was because my dad thought my sister wasn't really his child. This made them get divorced. Dad let mom keep our house and he moved out. He paid for my schooling but not for my sister's. He didn't give money to support her, and I don't know why mom didn't ask for it. Maybe that's why people believe Dad's claim about my sister. Dad wasn't around much during my childhood. Sometimes my dad would come to my school to pay for my fees and bring me gifts. But when I started high school, I reached out to him, and since then, he's been a big part of my life. He even came to my wedding, even though my mom didn't like it. Over time, I grew closer to my dad than to my mom. He visited me in Ohio twice after I moved here, but then he got very sick, and we lost him last year. Mom didn't like how close I was to my dad, and she started acting distant. To make her even more upset, my dad named me as his heir. He got married again after divorcing my mom, but he didn't have any kids with his new wife. My dad always said I was his only daughter. Mom and my sister didn't like me because Dad favored me, and I got to inherit his $400,000 trust fund. But it's not just about the money. Dad supported me through school, so I got a better education than my sister. This meant I went to better schools and colleges and had a better life overall, thanks to the money Dad gave us after the divorce. I was 10 when they split, and by then the money for my education had already started coming in. I was 12, so Mom couldn't control it much. The money for my schooling went straight to the school, and later to college from the support Dad gave us. Mom did use some of the money for my sister and for things around the house. I wasn't a dumb kid, so my mom tried to keep me happy so I wouldn't complain. I won't say my mom and sister were mean to me when I was growing up, but they didn't really like me, and they were pretty close to each other while I felt left out. Plus, I was smart, not just in school but clever too. I wasn't someone they could push around easily. I think that's why my mom never mistreated me. Nowadays, my problem is the $400,000 my dad left for me. Ever since my mom and sister found out about it, they keep asking me for money. Actually, this isn't the first time they've asked for money. I've been helping them financially since I started working. As I made more money, their needs grew. I don't owe them anything, but I help them because they're family and they don't make much money. My mom works as a cashier and my sister works in a store. Together, they don't make half as much as I do, so I feel like I should help them. We might not be very close emotionally, but they've never been mean to me. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say and that I'm not confusing you with my feelings. A few months ago, my mom called me and said she wanted to fix up our house. Over the years, the walls, ceilings, and floors had gotten really damaged. Since Dad left, we hadn't been able to keep up with repairs. The house hadn't been painted, and the wiring was messed up. The ceilings and walls were falling apart in places. We never had enough money to take care of the house. Mom said it was getting hard to live there, especially during storms. She went to the bank to ask for a loan, but the interest rates were too high. I knew she wanted me to give her the money for the renovations, but neither of us said it directly. It was an awkward talk, so after that, I started ignoring her calls. She doesn't call me much, usually just once a month, but last month she called me 3 or 4 times. When I finally answered her call, Mom said it wasn't safe to stay in our house anymore because it was falling apart in bad weather. This time, she was direct and asked me for money. She promised to pay it back bit by bit. I asked her how much she needed, and she said $100,000. I was shocked. I didn't have that much to lend. She hinted at the inheritance money. I was angry but didn't want to talk about it. I said I could only lend $50,000. She agreed. Later, I realized I was too quick to offer $50,000. I could have just ignored her, but now that I'd said it, I had to lend her the money. I didn't feel good about lending such a big amount. My husband suggested that I lend the money bit by bit and check on the progress of the house before giving more. I told my mom I'd send $50,000 in parts. I had an old account in Houston that I hadn't used, so I activated it and sent $10,000 there. I gave Mom access to that account. She asked why I didn't send the money directly to her account, and I made up an excuse. It was actually my husband's idea. I'm not very hopeful that she'll pay it back, but let's see how it goes. Update. I can't figure out exactly how my mom and sister tried to trick me for easy money. It's been 2 months since I started lending money to my mom for the house renovations. I've given $20,000 so far, and I'm not giving any more after this. I always knew they were only nice to me for my money, but I never thought they would lie to me this much just to get money from me. If they had been honest with me, it wouldn't have hurt so much. Recently, I found out that my sister is getting married, not from my family, but from one of my school friends. My friend's husband is a wedding planner, and my sister has been working with his agency to plan her big wedding. They're calling it a grand wedding. I don't think my sister knew that I'm friends with them. A wedding worth $50,000 is definitely grand. It hurts to find out about your sister's wedding from someone else. I wasn't even told about it, let alone invited. I thought it would be a small and intimate wedding with just a few people, but my friend told me the guest list was around 100. It was heartbreaking not to even be among those 100 guests. Feeling sad about it is one thing, but I'm more concerned about the money. Where did my sister get the money to organize such an extravagant wedding? It was held at one of the best venues in town, with unlimited food and drinks, and top-notch decorations and flowers. I checked the bank account where I was sending money to my mom for her supposed renovation project, but it was empty. I called Mom to ask if the renovations had started. She said yes, she hired a renovation company, but the work hadn't begun yet. I couldn't stand her lies. Until then, I wasn't sure if they were really using my money for her wedding. But the thought of them spending a lot on her wedding while still taking money from me for the house renovation disgusted me. I briefly thought about flying to Houston to check things out myself, but I realized it wouldn't be worth it. Instead, I called my aunt, who lived nearby my mom's house. I asked if she knew about my sister's wedding, and she said yes, but she wasn't invited either. Mom doesn't get along with my dad's side of the family, so it made sense. She also mentioned that my sister's wedding had become the talk of the neighborhood. I mean, just a few years ago, their house was falling apart, and now they have a brand new house and a lavish wedding. Hearing this made me feel dizzy and confused. Mom told me the house still needed repairs, but my aunt said it looked new with fresh paint. Then I remembered about 6 months ago, Mom asked me for $20,000 for her knee surgery. I called Mom to ask where she had the surgery done. I lied, saying a friend needed details for her dad's surgery. Mom struggled to remember and couldn't give me any information about the hospital or clinic. She seemed caught off guard and hung up, saying there was a network issue. When I called again, her phone was off, and she didn't answer for days. I sent a text, but she didn't read it. I realized she was lying. The money I gave her for the surgery was probably used for the house renovations, and the money she's taking now is likely for my sister's wedding. I also found out my sister got engaged on our front lawn with decorations and wine. I felt like I'd been living in the dark because I had no idea they were living so lavishly and pretending to be poor to get money from me. So I decided to cut them off. I stopped sending money to that account, and when Mom called or texted, I ignored her. My sister, who never called before, tried calling, but I ignored her too. I'm done with their lies and manipulation. Just because I make more money than them and my dad left me an inheritance while giving them nothing doesn't give them the right to take advantage of me with their lies. I've decided to spoil my mom's princess's big day. Update 2. I was right about my mom. When I ignored all their attempts to reach me, my mom called my husband. Let me tell you, my husband can be a bit of a party pooper. I warned him not to talk to them, but when my mom called him, he did. She started crying, saying I was avoiding them. They needed money to finish the renovations, and I had broken my promise. My husband spilled the beans. Yes, he did that. I wanted to smack him on the head. He told her that I knew the truth, that she'd been using me for money, and that the money was really for my sister's wedding, which is why I cut them off. I was really angry because I wanted them to suffer for their deception, but my husband ruined everything. He also told my mom that we knew she lied about the knee surgery and used that money for the house repairs. After that call, my mom bombarded my phone with apologies. She said it was all a misunderstanding. She borrowed the money from someone for the house repairs and was paying them back with my money. It was another lie. After her constant calls and messages, I said I'd talk to her only if she promised to tell me the truth. She agreed. When we spoke, she finally told me everything. She said my sister wanted a big wedding, but they didn't have the money for it, so they decided to ask me for it. It was my sister's idea to use the excuse of house renovations to get the money from me. They knew I hadn't been to Houston in years and wasn't in touch with anyone there, so I wouldn't know the house was already renovated. I asked her why she didn't just tell me the truth and ask for money directly for the wedding. She said my sister didn't want that. She said she didn't want to ask me for a favor directly. Can you believe that? I told her I knew she used the knee surgery money I gave her to fix the house. She went silent. I told her I knew everything, so there was no point in hiding it. She said the house was falling apart, and my sister's in-laws were coming to visit, so they had to fix it quickly. They couldn't think of a better reason to get money from me in a hurry, so she panicked and called me, saying the doctor wanted her to have urgent knee surgery, and I sent the money right away. Even though I stayed strong on the call, I was crying inside. How could my own mother deceive me like this? I know they have money problems, but that doesn't give them the right to manipulate me and take advantage of my emotions. After I heard the truth, I hung up and cried for hours. I can't remember the last time I cried so much. Maybe when my dad passed away. I missed him terribly that day. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Mom asking me to send the rest of the money so they could keep planning the wedding. It disgusted me so much that I wanted to scream at her. If she wasn't my mom, I think she was really selfish. She didn't show any regret. All she cared about was money. They didn't even invite me to the wedding, not even out of politeness. When the truth came out, I felt so frustrated that I blocked both of them. I also warned my husband not to talk to them, and if he disobeys me again, he'll sleep outside in the cold. I'm serious about this. I'm keeping in touch with my aunt, and she told me the wedding is next month. I didn't tell her about the money, but I know my mom and sister are struggling more and more each day to make the wedding they wanted happen. Good for them. Update 3. Mom and sister kept calling and leaving voicemails until the wedding day, asking for money, but I didn't give in. On the wedding day, Mom's last voicemail said she was ashamed of me and disowned me. It hurt so much. I cried a lot in front of my husband. People might say I'm mean for ruining my sister's wedding. Mom called me arrogant and selfish too. But she never thought about her lies. She tricked me for so long. I helped them because I felt like I had to. I thought of them as family, but to them, I was just a way to get money. On the wedding day, my friend, whose husband was the wedding planner, called. She said the wedding might be canceled because they weren't paying for it anymore. I asked my friend how much they paid for the wedding so far, and she said $20,000. I said that's enough for a nice wedding, but she said my sister ordered fancy decorations and food, and the location alone cost $20,000. She asked if I was going, and I said no, I had other plans. My friend knew I wasn't close to my mom and sister. To be honest, I felt upset because I felt like I ruined my sister's wedding. For a moment, I thought about giving the rest of the money to my friend to finish the wedding as planned, but then I remembered my mom's voicemail disowning me. What's the point of helping them if they disown me in the end? Maybe my actions weren't great, but they were a reaction to their hurtful actions. I turned off my phone and spent the day with my kids to keep my mind off things. The next day, my friend called again, upset with my sister because the wedding made her husband look bad in the business. On the wedding day, Mom and sister begged her husband to arrange something basic for the wedding and promised to pay $10,000 more. He managed to get decent food and decorations because the $20,000 advance covered most of the venue cost. But guests and the groom's family criticized the arrangements, and my sister blamed the wedding planner. She said he messed everything up. My friend's husband wanted to tell the truth, but Mom begged him not to ruin my sister's life. He stayed quiet and took the blame. Plus, they hadn't paid the promised $10,000 yet. I felt so embarrassed. I didn't know what to say. My friend said she wasn't blaming me, just sharing her frustration. I felt bad for my family's embarrassment, but also embarrassed they blamed the planner. My husband said they got what they deserved, and I shouldn't worry about them. They brought it on themselves by being dishonest. I'm relieved to stay away from their lies and tricks. Mom disowning me turned out to be a blessing. I don't have to deal with their lies anymore. On to the next chapter. My husband dropped a bombshell yesterday. He confessed that he's in love with my sister, but he said it when he was drunk, so I don't know if it's real. We all had dinner together with my sister and her husband, and we drank a lot. After they left, my husband and I had sex. We were tired, so we kept drinking wine, listening to music, and having a good time. My husband seemed happy, like he always does when he's drunk. We talked about my sister and her husband, and out of nowhere he said, "I'm so in love with sister's name." I was shocked and asked, "What?" He said, "I'm crazy about sister's name. I wish I could kiss her, she's amazing." He had this dreamy look on his face and kept smiling. I asked him if he was really drunk, and he said, "Probably." It hit me hard, even though I was also drunk. I just sat there silently, and he seemed lost in his thoughts with a smile on his face. I went to bed feeling confused and upset. This morning, I woke up sober and all those memories came rushing back. What my husband said is haunting me, and I feel shattered inside. He hasn't mentioned anything and seems fine, just dealing with a hangover. I don't know what to do now. He's always had a good relationship with my sister, so should I ignore what he said when he was drunk? Maybe it was just the alcohol talking? Should I wait for him to bring it up? I'm not even sure if he remembers. And what about the sex we had? It felt different. Even though I enjoyed it and thought it was amazing, he seemed different, more passionate and loving. He kept saying, "I love you, you're amazing." My sister recently lost weight and looked stunning in a form-fitting dress yesterday, and we all complimented her. She was really happy about it. I'm not sure why I'm mentioning this, but maybe it's important. I'll definitely talk to him about it when he's not hungover and can think clearly. I'm torn about whether to believe the saying, "drunk mind speaks sober thoughts," because alcohol can cloud judgment. I'm not sure if I can fully believe that alcohol alone could make someone confess love for their sister-in-law. Even if he denies it, do you think you can get past this? Because I believe he'll deny it. If I were you, I wouldn't feel comfortable with my husband and sister being together again, and that's not good for a marriage. I think he was probably just expressing his attraction to your sister in the moment. Honestly, when people's inhibitions are lowered, they might mix up feelings of lust and love. So, regardless, you need to talk seriously with your husband. No one else can answer for him, and even after talking, it might be really hard for you to move forward. From experience, I know that even if it's just lust, you might carry this experience with you like a shadow. If you both want to try to make things work, I suggest going to couples counseling and getting therapy individually to help you both move forward in a healthy way. I wish you all the best and hope for a brighter future for you. I'm really sorry you're going through this. Something similar happened to me once. My ex said, "I love you," but he used my twin sister's name instead. When I corrected him, he acted like he made a mistake. But he didn't. He was actually in love with my sister. He was only dating me to get to her. You need to have a serious talk with your husband about this. It makes no sense for him to date you if he's interested in your sister. No sister would ever accept her sister's ex. At least, that's what I thought until she dated him after I. Our upbringing was tough, and our relationship wasn't great because our parents often compared us and put us against each other. I agree, most of the time, that's the worst way to handle it. It would be much better to be friends with their siblings instead of getting involved with them romantically. But I guess he wasn't thinking clearly, lol. It's painful to read about. You definitely need to talk to him about it today. He's acting like nothing happened. Do you think he doesn't remember saying it? I agree that drunk words often reveal sober thoughts. Have you ever noticed any behavior towards her that made you stop and think? Ask him directly while you're facing each other. His reaction will tell you a lot. He's always liked my sister. He gets along with my whole family and is friends with my brothers. But my sister is the one he likes the most, and we're very close to her and her husband. We usually do things together as a group. But my sister has always been my best friend, so it seemed normal. If he had only said, "I love her," it could have been just a drunken slip-up. But he made sure to express his feelings clearly. His words weren't just drunken nonsense. They were sincere and showed deep feelings, especially since his inhibitions were down. People say silly things when they're drunk, but they don't usually profess their love for someone like that unless it's important to them. I would bring it up directly and see how he reacts. That should give you a clear answer. Update. Hi, it's been 3 days since I last updated because I'm feeling conflicted. I talked to my husband on Sunday about what happened. He said he didn't remember much about that night, especially after my sister and her husband left and we kept drinking. I told him what he said, but he didn't seem shocked or surprised, just that he didn't remember saying anything. I asked him if he felt that way before we started drinking. He said he's always loved my sister because she's kind and warm. He also mentioned that he thought she looked really beautiful that night, and maybe his drunk self thought she was attractive. He said it's normal for people to be curious about the opposite sex. He's always thought my family is good-looking, and my sister's weight loss gave her confidence, which made her look happy, and he was happy for her. I asked him if he had to choose between us, and he was shocked. He said I'm his wife and the mother of his children, and he loves me. When I asked him to imagine if we had just met and neither of us was married, he got frustrated and said this was getting ridiculous. He doesn't like playing hypothetical games because they can lead to unnecessary fights. After dinner, he reassured me that he loves me very much and that he's happy. He said I shouldn't overthink what he said when he was too drunk to even know who or where he was. I'm still unsure about everything. I appreciate your advice, and I've been thinking about seeing a therapist on my own. It would bother me a lot to think about how much his desire to stay connected with my sister, even if it's just a little, influenced his decision to stay with me. I could never get over the thought of him being intimate with her while using me as a substitute for his feelings for her. These thoughts would keep replaying in my mind forever, making it hard for me to feel connected during intimate moments with him. I'd always be comparing myself, feeling inadequate, and questioning if his feelings for me are genuine. My ADHD would make it even harder for me to believe that his affection for me wasn't just an act. My sister and I are very close, and we live close to each other. I've wondered if he settled for being close to her by being with me. I obsess over every interaction and mention of her, wondering if he's as happy with me as he seems to be with her. I'm not sure if what he's saying is true or if I'm just imagining things now. There's no way to come back from this. It will always be on my mind. I need to trust my instincts and stand up for myself. He admitted his feelings for my sister to me. He's had these feelings for years, but he says he loves me and our life together. We're going to start counseling, and from now on, when I spend time with my sister, he won't be there. He's confessed his feelings for her, but he says he's never acted on them in the past and won't in the future. My friend always says, "Oops, I left my wallet at home," whenever we go out, expecting me to foot the bill. It bothers me, but my husband had an idea. So I invited her out, pretending I forgot to buy something. We left the place, and now we're trying out our plan. I hope it works. My name's Addison, and I'm 34 years old. I work part-time while my husband Johnny brings in a good income. Our little family, including our 4-year-old son Cliff, lives comfortably. We recently upgraded from an apartment to a house after saving up some money. That's when I met Susanna, a fellow mom in the neighborhood. She's raising her husband's stepchild, which I found intriguing. Eager to befriend her, I soon realized that Susanna had quite the personality. Despite not knowing her well, we welcomed her into our lives. Today, after my son's gym class, I decided to join in, hoping to integrate into the community. It went well, and I made friends with other local moms who invited me for lunch. We grabbed sandwiches and coffee at a nearby cafe when suddenly Susanna appeared out of nowhere. "Addison, what a coincidence! Are you here for a tea party?" she exclaimed loudly, joining our table without hesitation. We exchanged uncertain glances, but couldn't turn her away, so we ended up having lunch with Susanna. As we were finishing up lunch, we started discussing splitting the bill. Then Susanna chimed in, "Since I just happened to be here, I don't need to pay, right?" We exchanged glances, knowing exactly what was happening. Susanna's habit of dodging payment was rearing its head again. Plus, I didn't order anything, so it wouldn't make sense for me to pay, she argued. We sighed at her reasoning. She always found excuses to avoid paying her share. "But Susanna, you did have something to eat, and you ordered coffee," Addison pointed out. "Can you cover for me this time?" "I didn't plan on joining you guys today and didn't bring any money," Susanna replied. We thought she shouldn't have joined us if that was the case, but no one voiced it aloud. I hesitated, but Susanna insisted stubbornly, "I'll pay you back later." "Come on, Addison. We're neighbors. Let's be good neighbors." "So what? What does that have to do with anything?" I wanted to argue, but Susanna started getting upset, refusing to budge, not wanting to make a scene. I reluctantly agreed to her promise and ended up paying for both of us. I received sympathetic looks from those around us, feeling uncomfortable. It was just another example of Susanna's behavior since I moved here. The following day, I found myself at Susanna's doorstep, ready to collect the money she owed me from the previous day. I decided to visit her in person to prevent any excuses about not having her wallet. When I asked for the money, Susanna's expression turned sour. "Seriously, you came all this way just for $10, Addison? That's surprisingly petty of you," she retorted, clearly reluctant to part with the cash. I had anticipated this reaction, knowing Susanna's track record of not repaying me on numerous occasions before. "You've said that before, but you never followed through. You currently owe me over $100. Enough is enough," I stated firmly, feeling a hint of frustration. Susanna's frown deepened, and she glared at me like a stubborn child. However, I was determined not to back down. Today, Susanna's behavior was quite troublesome. Whether it was hitching a ride to the station when I was heading to work or conveniently forgetting her wallet during shopping trips, her antics seemed endless. Confronting her about it only resulted in childish sulking, with her trying to shift the blame onto me by mentioning Johnny's income and implying I was overly frugal. It was beyond frustrating. If only she could act like a normal friend instead of this. On the day of our shopping trip, Susanna hopped into the car ahead of us, quipping, "Did you forget anything, like your wallet?" I responded curtly, "You should check too," before urging Johnny to start the car. With Cliff safely with my parents, we made our way to the wholesale store where we found it jam-packed with shoppers. Despite the chaos, I kept our plan firmly in mind. However, we wouldn't have needed the plan if Susanna simply paid her own way. "Wow, look at all this food. They have such a variety," Susanna exclaimed, enthusiastically piling her cart with bags. "Try to keep your items separate," I suggested, but she waved it off, saying we could sort it out later. Despite my warning, my cart soon overflowed with items. I regretted grabbing a cart in the first place, only intending to pick up a few things. It seemed she had no intention of paying for herself, oblivious to our silent frustrations as she continued browsing without checking prices. As we approached the checkout, Susanna's familiar habits resurfaced. Something seems off." Johnny and I exchanged concerned glances. Susanna fumbled through her purse, looking expectantly at us as if waiting for a prompt. When we remained silent, she couldn't hold back any longer and loudly declared, "Oops, I left my wallet at home." Johnny and I exchanged a knowing look, deciding it was time to put our plan into motion. "Oh, I forgot to grab something," Johnny chimed in as we stood in line. I went along with Johnny's plan, nodding in agreement. Susanna, who had been rummaging through her purse, turned to us. "Could you go get it?" she asked. "But what if you can't find it?" I responded, "I know where it is." "Susanna, can you watch the cart while we go back?" I asked, pushing the cart towards her. Susanna instinctively took hold of it. "Huh?" she questioned. "We'll be quick. You sure you'll be okay? Remember, I don't have my wallet," I reminded her. Susanna reluctantly agreed to wait in line while we went to fetch the forgotten item. Johnny and I exchanged a subtle smile, making sure Susanna didn't notice. We then discreetly hid behind shelves and people, keeping a close watch on her. It seemed our plan was unfolding as expected. How long would she wait? With the cart full of items, she couldn't easily abandon them when it was her turn. Suppressing a mischievous chuckle, we remembered how Susanna always relied on my wallet. There were instances when she would make excuses to leave early if I refused to pay. Recalling this, Johnny suggested we turn the tables on her. However, we had agreed that if Susanna made any attempt to pay, we would let it slide this time. But true to form, the moment she reached the checkout, she announced she'd left her wallet behind, seemingly banking on us to foot the bill. It was a predictable move, especially considering her lingering resentment over the last lunch money. Sensing that we weren't returning, Susanna began to look around nervously, staying in line, perhaps contemplating her next move if we did come back. As the line advanced, Johnny and I decided to proceed with the next step of our plan. "Sorry, Susanna, but my mom just called with an urgent matter. You know she's looking after the kids and can't leave the house. So we need to head back home," I informed Susanna over the phone. Susanna's voice betrayed her shock and panic. Wait. What about paying? I forgot my wallet too." "Please hurry back and pay before you leave. Nowadays, you can pay with your phone, right? Figure something out. And most of the shopping is yours anyway. If you don't want to pay for our few items, just remove them from the cart. It should be quick since we only picked up 2 or 3 things." Susanna's voice grew increasingly irritated. "I don't have any means to pay. Come back now, or at least leave Johnny here," Johnny interjected, taking my phone with an exasperated tone. "I need to help with the heavy lifting." "Sorry, but you'll have to take a cab back. It's urgent. Or maybe get your husband Phil to pick you up." Susanna was left speechless. We knew she was wary of Phil, as we had heard from other local mom friends about her previous encounters where Phil had sharply scolded her. Despite this, she hadn't learned her lesson and continued her schemes behind Phil's back. That's the situation. If you're unsure how to use your phone to pay, ask the staff. They should be able to assist you. As that register accepts mobile payments, I explained. Susanna clenched her teeth. Did you set me up? Of course not. Isn't it normal to pay for your own things? Why would I set you up? I responded calmly. Susanna fell silent, visibly frustrated. We ended the call with her and drove off, imagining Susanna causing a scene at the register, sharing a laugh. The following day, Susanna showed up at my doorstep, clearly still upset about what happened the day before. After enduring several rounds of persistent doorbell ringing, I reluctantly answered. There she stood, her face flushed with anger. It was awful to leave me stranded like that. I demand compensation, she declared, her tone leaving me skeptical. As she launched into a tirade about the events of the previous day, claiming she had panicked and insisting I owed her double the amount, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at her demand. Did you even pay for our items? She questioned angrily, seemingly oblivious to the absurdity of her own words. Why would I pay for your shopping? I responded incredulously, causing Susanna's fury to intensify. You only covered your own purchases. Why the sudden anger? I feigned innocence, but Susanna's frustration reached a boiling point. Being left behind was deeply upsetting. It caused me emotional distress. You should reimburse me for the shopping, the taxi fare, and the inconvenience. After all, you invited me to join you, she insisted, twisting the story to suit her narrative, frowning at her unreasonable demands, especially her attempt to shift blame onto us by portraying herself as an innocent victim. I couldn't help but feel absurd for even entertaining this conversation. Susanna's audacity left me astounded. Unfazed by my reaction, Susanna issued a threat. If you refuse to pay, I'll spread rumors about you to the neighbors. Think about the consequences for your fancy house. Pay up if you want to avoid that. Confronted with Susanna's unreasonable ultimatum, I realized it was time to reassess our relationship. Just then, a familiar voice broke the tension. At the sound of it, Susanna's face drained of color, and she swiftly turned around. There stood Johnny and Phil, engaged in conversation as they strolled together. What's going on? Phil inquired, sensing the tension in the air. Oh, it's about yesterday, Johnny began, shooting Susanna a meaningful glance. When I mentioned that, he trailed off, leaving Phil curious. Johnny proceeded to recount the events of their trip to the wholesale store with Susanna and how they had to leave abruptly due to an unforeseen circumstance. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to buy anything in the end, Johnny concluded, sharing a chuckle with Phil. That's too bad. Phil remarked with a sympathetic smile, unaware of the tension that had transpired. Turning to Susanna, Phil questioned her. What's your side of the story? Suddenly stripped of her previous assertiveness, Susanna stumbled over her words, attempting to formulate a response. Sensing her discomfort, I decided to fill Phil in on Susanna's demands from earlier, noting how deeply hurt she had seemed. I'm genuinely sorry, but asking for compensation and shopping money seems a bit excessive, I expressed, causing Susanna's face to pale. What do you mean? Susanna protested, her voice tinged with desperation. That's not how it is. But wasn't that the purpose of your visit today? Or was there another reason? Phil interjected, his tone curious yet perceptive. Caught off guard by Phil's directness, Susanna lapsed into an uneasy silence, her frustration palpable. Phil, sensing that something wasn't adding up, frowned in suspicion. Noticing Susanna's pleading gaze, she turned to me for support, but I remained silent. Next time, we won't leave you behind. Let's go shopping together again, all right? I suggested with a faint smile, attempting to diffuse the tension. Okay, Susanna replied hastily, her face drained of color as she hurriedly made her exit. Later, Phil confronted Susanna once more. This wasn't the first time such an incident had occurred, and his frustration was entirely justified. He had personally looked into Susanna's actions after receiving multiple complaints from other local moms, which only fueled his anger. Confronting Susanna about her exploitation of others, he discovered her misuse of household funds on luxury items, which had led to discussions of divorce. Desperate to salvage their marriage, Susanna pleaded with Phil, but he felt betrayed and ultimately decided to kick her out for the sake of their child. Eventually, they went through with the divorce proceedings, with Susanna returning to her family's home to assist with farming. With the troublesome influence of Susanna gone, the neighborhood regained its peace. Nevertheless, we maintained our friendship with Phil and continued to offer our support whenever needed.